Hello everybody and welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. My name is Jason C, and if you're a subscriber, thanks so much for the support. And if you're new to the channel looking for the latest in whiskey and bourbon news and reviews, you have found the right place, so hit that subscribe button below and hit that bell notification so you know when I'm releasing a new video, or you could join in one of my live streams. It sometimes gets confused for bourbon or overshadowed by its top rival, Jack Daniel's, but George Dickel ranks as the second largest manufacturer of Tennessee whiskey. Lodged in a rustic corner of Tennessee, 77 miles southeast of Nashville, closer to Chattanooga and nearer still to Jack Daniel's hometown of Lynchburg, Dickel produces whiskey much as it has since its beginnings in 1870. Whiskeys like the number 8, the number 12, and the new Bottled and Bond are all today's reviews on the Mash and Drum. Born 40 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, George A. Dickel was an established Nashville merchant when he entered the whiskey business. Dickel grew his reputation for selling the smoothest, most mellow spirits in the region. So in 1878, Dickel invests in and buys a lot of whiskey from a new distillery called Cascade Hollow, located in Coffee County between Nashville and Chattanooga. Eventually, his partners buy the whole company, then enlarge the distillery to produce their own whiskey under the name George A. Dickel's Cascade Tennessee Whiskey. By 1904, under the leadership of Augusta Dickel and business partner Victor Schwab, the distillery had prospered. If you look close at the labels, George Dickel followed in the Scottish tradition of spelling whiskey without an E. As a child growing up in Europe, though, Dickel considered Scotch the ultimate whiskey. So when he started making his own spirit, he adopted the Scottish spelling whiskey without the E. George Dickel preferred whiskey made in the winter months more than summer months because he felt it made the whiskey taste smoother. So the company began advertising their George A. Dickel Cascade Tennessee Whiskey as mellow as moonlight. To this day, Cascade Hollow Distillery chills its liquids to 40 degrees before charcoal filtering it. Although Prohibition became federal law in 1919, it was enacted in Tennessee 9 years earlier. The distillery was closed, but the then-named Cascade whiskey was allowed to be sold as a medicinal spirit through leased equipment at the Stitzel-Weller Distillery in Kentucky. 25 years after the repeal of Prohibition in 1958, a new distillery was opened down the road from the original Cascade Hollow Distillery, and it began producing whiskey known as George A. Dickel Tennessee Whiskey. So in 1964, Dickel released the first of its current products, Dickel Black Label, Old Number 8, and Dickel Tan Label, Superior Number 12. Though the federally defined specs of Tennessee whiskey mirror those of bourbon, 51% corn plus rye and barley, then aged in charred new oak barrels, the liquid additionally goes through what's called the Lincoln County process, meaning that it gets filtered through charcoal before aging. The charcoal used for filtering Tennessee whiskey comes from sugar maple trees and is burned on premises at Cascade Hollow. Because the charcoal strips out additional congeners, it's believed to make for a lighter, mellower product than bourbon. The Cascade Hollow Whiskey Company is a rare distillery that uses almost no computers. Instead, distillers hand-weigh grains and manually move heavy loads of charcoal from where they burn it in front of the visitor center to the distillery right across the street. The Lincoln County process is also called charcoal mellowing. However, instead of the whiskey being continuously dripped through a large vat of charcoal like at Jack Daniel's, Dickel distillate is placed in a vat along with the charcoal and allowed to sit for a few days before it's drained and sent off to bottle. So that brings us to today's reviews for Dickel's two flagship offerings and the new Bottled and Bond. Now, according to a Dickel spokesperson, the numbers behind number 8 and number 12 are an unsolved mystery as they do not relate to the number of years the whiskey is aged. So if you think the big 8 and 12 on the front of the bottle means how old it is like I did, then think again. Aged for 5 to 7 years, George Dickel's Classic Number 8 is one of George Dickel's original recipes that comes in at 80 proof and is only priced at about $18. Aged for 6 to 8 years, George Dickel's Superior Number 12 blends older whiskeys to create what the company describes as deeper and more assertive flavors and an incredibly smooth finish. This is bottled at 90 proof and available for an affordable $20. Now in 2018, George Dickel Distillery made a couple of large directional changes. The distillery was rebranded to Cascade Hollow Distilling Company. They also brought on seasoned female general manager and head distiller Nicole Austin. This is the first release with her fingerprints on it. The whiskey shows the path and vision Nicole has for the new Cascade Hollow Distillery, providing high quality, well-aged yet affordable whiskey. That release is the new George Dickel Bottled and Bond. This is a 13-year-old bottled and bond whiskey that fits the bill for all bottled and bond requirements. It was aged in one distilling season, fall 2005, by one distiller, Nicole Austin, at one location for a minimum of 4 years. Now this is bottled at 100 proof or 50% ABV, and the best part, suggested retail is about $35. So all three of these whiskeys use the same mash bill of 84% corn, 8% rye, and 8% malted barley. Tennessee whiskey, and in particular George Dickel whiskey, is used in a lot of blends and sourcing from craft distillery these days. And with the release of the Bottled and Bond, I really wanted to explore these three with you guys since I don't have a lot of experience with just straight George Dickel whiskey. So let's start with the old number 8 and see what we get here. All right, so first thing I smell here is some very light caramel flavors here on the nose. There's some vanilla there. A good amount of oak, but not a ton. The flavors are very light. Remember, this is only 80 proof, so you're not going to have a ton of alcohol coming through. It's very light, very sweet. There's kind of a prevailing theory here that George Dickel whiskey tastes like an unopened or an open canister of Flintstone vitamins. It has that like a mineral type aspect to it, and I do get that a little bit on the nose here. There's a slight kind of a mineral quality to it. But as I've sipped through these during the week, that mineral quality has kind of dissipated a little bit, and it's just gotten a little bit sweeter. A little bit of a maple characteristic, probably from that charcoal mellowing, but not a ton of flavor on the nose here. It's very straightforward. So let's go into the palate and see what we get. Cheers. All right, so first thing you notice about the number 8, it's very thin. It's not going to coat your palate, being 80 proof. It's watered down, all the way to the minimum bottling proof there at 80. You do get a little bit of a maple characteristic there. That mineral quality that I was getting when I first opened these is starting to go away and kind of make way now for a little bit more of a peanut characteristic, which I think is kind of interesting. All right, let's go for another sip. Cheers. Yeah, so very light vanilla, very light caramel. There's a lot of corn sweetness coming through here that you could taste. Remember, this is 84% corn, according to the mash bill, so it does have a lot of corn sweetness. Let's go for one more sip here. Yep. The finish, actually, for an 80 proof whiskey has a nice little bite to it. It's got this like a black pepper aspect to it. You get a little bit more of that charcoal, that maple filtering, maybe that little bit of a maple and oak character on the very back of the palate. But everything is very quick. Vanilla, caramel, oak. It's a very straightforward whiskey at 80 proof. But for $17, this is a damn good whiskey, and I think probably would serve really good as a mixer too. All right, let's move on to the Superior number 12. All right, so the Superior 12, as I mentioned, it's bottled at 90 proof, about 6 to 8 years old, and they kind of blend some different barrels to get a little bit more of a bolder flavor. So let's get into the nose and see what we get first. All right, so yeah, these flavors are much more amped up. And if you're actually going to compare the color between the two whiskeys here, the 12 is definitely darker, slightly darker, but you could tell there's a more of a bolder finish quality to it. It's 10 points higher in proof, so it's going to be a little bit darker here. See, this is a more rich and full nose here. I like this nose a lot. This is the vanilla and the caramels, but they're definitely amped up here a little bit. A little bit more of a brown butter aspect to it, almost like that buttered, like deep, rich buttered popcorn. It's very Cracker Jack to me, like a fresh box of Cracker Jacks. And again, just like the 8, this one, which had that Flintstone vitamin mineral quality to it, has dissipated over time as I've gotten the bottle down a little bit, and now it's becoming more of a peanut characteristic. So one thing I've learned about these bottles is that mineral quality that you get up front does seem to dissipate a little bit if you give it a little time. Yeah, this one has way more baking spice to it now. This has more cinnamon, some nutmeg to it. Yeah, much more fuller nose profile on this one. I like the nose on 12 a lot. All right, let's go into the palate, see what we get. Cheers, guys. Oh yeah, the palate is definitely way better on this one. Fuller, much more fuller flavor profile. Decent mouth coating here. That cinnamon and the nutmeg really kind of stick to the sides of your palate. Again, a little bit more of a peanut aspect to it, but good amount of sweet oak. It's got this vanilla custard type thing going on where it almost seems a little bit creamy on the palate. Really nice. Let's go for a second sip. Here we go. Yeah. If you've ever had a spiced cake, like around like Thanksgiving time, where the cake is spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg and has like a vanilla frosting on top of it, that's exactly what this reminds me of. It's very, very sweet. The mouth coating isn't staying around like it did on the first sip, but the finish on this one is way better. More of that black pepper, more oak, but that nutmeg, cinnamon spice is really kind of lingering now to go along with that black pepper that I was getting in the number 8. Let's go for another sip here. Cheers. All right, third sip. It does flatten out a little bit. It starts getting a little lighter with the flavors, but the prevailing flavor here is that vanilla, custard, and cinnamon spice there, that especially on the back of the palate. But really good, very, very well-balanced whiskey, especially for a $20 whiskey. I really like the 12 a lot. Let's go in for one last sip here. Cheers. Sweet oak up front. I think oak is really kind of the first thing you taste. A little bit of that maple characteristic. Then vanilla kind of takes over, that vanilla custard type aspect to it. Then it just all becomes cinnamon, nutmeg, spice, black pepper. And it lingers. It definitely has a longer finish than number 8. I would give this to a short, right on the cusp of becoming a medium finish. The burn does linger a little bit, way more than the classic number 8. But very good whiskey here. Very good. I was very surprised when I first cracked this open and what this is turning into as it's gone down the bottle a little bit. All right, so finally we have the new Bottled in Bond. This is 13 years old, 100 proof. I want to thank my friend Mackenzie in Nashville for scoring me a bottle of this. I really appreciate it. I believe this is a Tennessee-only release at launch this past May, with a nationwide release to come, I believe. So as you can see, the color here is definitely the darkest of the three. Being in that oak for 13 years definitely imparts some good color into there as well. Has a good coating on the glass, being 100 proof. So we have 80, 90, and now 100 proof. So let's go into the nose and see what we get here. Wow, this is two completely different whiskeys from when I opened it to now. And that kind of runs through the entire line that I've tasted this week, because this one was kind of a ridiculously super oak bomb when I first opened it. It was a ton of oak, which could be overwhelming for some people, but the more I've sipped on it, the sweeter it's gotten. And also, again, like these, that kind of mineral characteristic has gone away a little bit and made way for other flavors. So again, this is all baking spices, some more cinnamon, some more of that nutmeg characteristic that I was getting in the 12, just definitely amped up a little bit. There is that oak in there. The oak is still very prevalent, but not nearly as it was when I first opened this thing. This was kind of an oak bomb at first, but now I really like where it's going now that it's gotten a little bit past the shoulder here. There's even out of all three, this one has developed a little bit of a fruit characteristic now. Getting a little bit of a dark fruit, maybe a little bit of a cherry characteristic in there. Just a really nice nose. It's amped up flavors. You get a little bit more of the proof on the nose here. This is the highest proof at 100 proof. Definitely a little bit more astringent. But yeah, just a much fuller, definitely the fullest nose out of all three of them when you compare them down the line. So let's taste it and see what we get. Cheers. Yeah, this is all oak and caramel, more of those baking spices. It's pretty mouth coating, but I don't find it that much more mouth coating than the 12, but really good. Definitely has that lingering spice. It's definitely tastes like the other two. We're definitely in the same family here. Really unique spices though, and that fruit characteristic is coming through a little bit more too. Let's go for another sip here. Yeah, this has more of a vanilla extract type aspect to it. Good balance with the oak. The oak is still, like I said, it's still very prominent, but not nearly as it was when I first opened it. Obviously, longest finish here to be expected, but this has a little bit more of a smoother finish. Like these, I feel like had more bite to it. They were a little bit, maybe being slightly a little bit of a younger whiskey. The bite on this and the black pepper really stuck around. While this one definitely is a little bit more rounded, finishes a little bit smoother, really nice on the palate. Let's go for another sip. Yeah, this is all just delicious oak, caramel, more of those baking spices that I was getting in the 12 here. The cinnamon, the nutmeg, that kind of spiced cake, that spiced fall cake flavor profile was really, really good in there. Finish is more black pepper, definitely more of that oak. The maple that I was getting in the 12 and the 8 is kind of not as much there. I'm getting it more in the 12, and the 13 is just more oak on the finish. All right, let's go for one more sip, guys. Cheers. All right, so right up front, good punch of oak, and then all of a sudden it gets to those sweet flavors. The vanilla extract, the caramel, and then all of a sudden it gets to about mid-palate, and then all of a sudden that cinnamon, the nutmeg, the baking spices kick in. And then on the finish, it's more black pepper, definitely more oak. Like I said, the finish is not as astringent. It actually finishes a lot smoother than I thought it would for a 100 proofer. It finishes really nice. I think with all three of these, you have something for everyone, but which one was my favorite? Let's see. So all this week I've been sipping on all three of these to get to them a bit before this review, and one conclusion I came is that I'm a fan of George Dickel. For the price and flavor, I think all three of these offer great value and great flavor. Now for me, the 8 at 17 bucks is as straightforward as it gets. It's vanilla, it's caramel, there's some oak, but at 80 proof, it's more of a mixer for me than something I drink neat. Now the 12 at 90 proof was the biggest surprise for me. Those spiced cake flavors that started appearing and the peppery finish really surprised me, and this had great flavor for a 90 proof whiskey at only 20 bucks. Now the bottled and bond at 100 proof is an oak monster at first that really needs some time to open up before it balances out for a full flavored pour with oak, spice, and sweetness. At 13 years old, the oak does play a heavy role in this one, but at 35 bucks, you can't question the value of this great whiskey. Now for me, surprisingly, it's the 12 that really emerged as my favorite. I felt it had a really perfect balance, flavor, sweetness, and a finish for a $20 whiskey. But all in all, George Dickel has my attention. All right, guys, well, I really hope you enjoyed this episode as we took a little bit of a walk through history with George Dickel Tennessee Whiskey. Hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun this week sipping on all three of these, learning more about the distillery, sharing it with you guys. The one factor I could say, if you ever pick up a bottle of this, don't judge these bottles on a neck pour at all. That mineral quality, that oaky characteristic definitely goes away, and it becomes sweeter as you keep sipping on it. So with that, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about any of these three. And as I always say, it is not about the whiskey. It is the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time. Take care.